Close your eyes and imagine this. No phones, no electricity, no running water. Now, remove your privacy, remove your bed, remove your rights. Welcome to the past. Not the glamorous, slow-motion version you see in costume dramas, but the raw, brutal, and utterly unforgiving truth of pre-modern life. Tonight, we're stripping away the fantasy to take you on a journey not through the palaces or courts, but straight into the grime-filled, hardship-drenched daily routine of the common folk who barely made it to their 30s. Spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't make it past breakfast. But before we step back centuries, if you enjoy storytelling that pulls no punches and immerses you into history like a good nightmare, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support keeps this journey alive, and I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you. All right, turn the lights low, get comfy, and let's begin a day in a life you're lucky not to live. Congratulations, or condolences. You've just regained consciousness in the year 1289. The sun hasn't risen yet, but you're already awake. Not because of a gentle alarm or a smartphone ping, but because something, likely a mouse, ran across your face while you were sleeping. Your bed is a flattened bundle of hemp straw, bound in an itchy sack and placed on dirt. It's been damp for the last week, thanks to the roof made of layered sod that leaks every time clouds get emotional. The space you're in is technically a house. Realistically, it's a glorified barn. 1 room, 1 fire pit, 10 living souls. No chimney, so the smoke from last night's fire is still hanging mid-air like a ghost that overstayed its welcome. You share the space with your siblings, parents, and one very judgmental rooster that refuses to shut up. No bathroom, no sink, no sense of boundaries. Privacy in this world is a luxury you've never heard of. You're 19 years old, and already your joints creak like they're 70. Your hands are calloused from constant labor, and your back is twisted from sleeping on uneven terrain for most of your life. You stretch, and instantly regret it. The chill in the air isn't refreshing, it's invasive. There's no insulation. Your breath visibly fogs, and the only warmth is the slowly fading heat of the communal blanket, a woolen sheet that smells like mildew and wet dog. Not that you know what clean smells like, because clean isn't a thing here. You sit up, scratch at the red patches of skin on your legs, and instantly feel the bite of your flea-ridden trousers. Everyone has lice, everyone itches. The woman next to you, your aunt possibly, or a cousin who's been living here for so long no one remembers why, grumbles in her sleep. Someone sneezes and a child starts crying. That's your cue. Time to begin your day. You shuffle toward the wall, which is just a row of planks, loosely nailed and stuffed with dried moss in the cracks. There's no mirror. You don't need one. You know what you look like, tired, dirty, and haunted by an ongoing war with intestinal parasites. You haven't bathed in weeks, but no one has. It's not that you're lazy. It's that bathing is genuinely difficult, and people believe too much water makes you sick anyway. The air smells like sour milk, smoke, sweat, and damp straw. It clings to your nostrils and sets up camp. The single clay cup near the doorway holds what remains of yesterday's ale. You take a sip. It's warm, flat, but safer than water, which may or may not carry the local strain of dysentery currently thinning the village population by the week. You step outside barefoot. Why? Because you only own 1 pair of shoes, and they're made of stiff hide, cracked and misshapen from years of wear. You save them for church days or funerals. Your feet hit the mud like they're coming home. There's no cobblestone road, just slush, manure, and forgotten turnips decomposing into the earth. Welcome to your morning commute. 40 steps to the outhouse. Except, there is no outhouse. Nature calls. And you answer behind the stable, hoping no one sees you. A toilet is a hole you've dug. Sometimes you miss. It's normal. You're used to it. You do your business while staring at the horizon, trying not to breathe too deeply because the scent might make you lose your appetite. Though that's rarely a concern because food is... Well, we'll get there. Once you've finished, you wipe yourself with a clump of moss. It's all you have. You throw it aside, wash your hands in a trough that's more slime than water, and return home, stepping over a pig who's still asleep outside your door. Pigs sleep wherever they like. You don't argue with pigs. You barely argue with people anymore. Inside, your father is already sharpening tools. Not because he's a carpenter, but because he works as a wood turner, which in this era means he carves things to trade for grain, if he's lucky. Your younger sister is stirring a pot of something on the fire. It's not breakfast. It's not even edible yet, it's just water and pebbles. She's hoping the vegetables from yesterday haven't fully spoiled. And you? You're just trying to make it to noon. By the time the morning sky turns from ash gray to the dull glow of overcast daylight, the fire pit is crackling weakly, and the first meal of the day is underway, or at least something pretending to be food. There's no golden toast, no sizzling bacon, and certainly no eggs. Chickens aren't laying, not in this weather, and even if they were, those eggs would be traded long before they'd be eaten. What sits inside the warped wooden bowl placed in front of you is a pale, lumpy gruel made from cracked barley and whatever else your sister could scrape from the bottom of the storage pot. It has the consistency of wet plaster and the color of defeat. Still, you eat it, slowly, without speaking, because complaining does nothing and hunger makes philosophers out of peasants. You focus on the texture to distract from the flavor, which is mostly ash, smoke, and a vague bitterness that could be mold. No spoons, of course. Everyone uses their fingers or broken bits of stale bread to scoop. The crust is dense and dry, but it's better than the splinters you might get from using the old wooden ladle, which has seen more winters than your entire generation combined. Some of the grain tastes fermented. That's normal. The storage bins in your hut aren't airtight. Mice nibble what they can reach, and mildew does the rest. Still, it fills your stomach just enough to keep you standing. No one eats for pleasure. Food is fuel, and barely that. You take a sip of the ale left over from last night's batch. It's a sour brew made from half-rotted grains, fermented just long enough to kill most of the waterborne threats. The alcohol content is low, but enough to make toddlers sleepy and adults slightly less miserable. Everyone drinks it. Even your 6-year-old cousin who's already learned how to sip without making a face. It's safer than the river water, which recently claimed 3 families down the hill. Some say it was the plague, others say it was bad humors. But you know the truth. They drank from the stream just after the tanner's apprentice dumped 2 buckets of hide-washing runoff into it. You saw it happen. You told no one. When breakfast ends, there's no cleanup, no dishes, just a ritual of licking fingers, wiping hands on burlap skirts or tunics, and placing the bowls near the fire to bake off whatever grime remains. Soap is rare and made from fat, ashes, and bitter herbs. You tried making it once. It burned your skin and stank for a month. No one asked you to try again. Hygiene is not a priority. Not because people are dirty by choice, but because the effort it takes to get clean isn't worth the risk of catching cold or being accused of vanity, which could be interpreted as a sin. In this world, survival beats dignity every single time. After the meal, your mother hands you a bundle of tools wrapped in cloth, a worn spade, a dented hoe, and a rope that's fraying badly. She's not a farmer, not exactly. She's what the village calls a mud binder, responsible for packing and sealing the walls of newer huts with clay, dung, and straw. But today, she's harvesting nettles for dye, which means you'll be heading to the fields without her. She squeezes your shoulder, a silent goodbye. She doesn't say she loves you. She doesn't have to. That gesture is enough. You pull on your outer tunic, scratchy, patched wool that's been mended more times than you can count. It doesn't fit well. It doesn't need to. Your belt is a piece of rope. Your leggings are repurposed from an uncle's old traveling cloak. And your hood, such as it is just a square of linen you wrap around your head to keep the drizzle off your scalp and the lice out of your ears. You scratch the back of your neck. The nits are getting worse. You hope the church distributes lye again soon, even though last time it left a rash on your cousin's entire face. Outside, the world is soft and wet. The ground squelches underfoot. Patches of moss and straw are laid along the trail to keep carts from sinking, but it doesn't help much. A wheelbarrow has already tipped sideways near the fence, spilling its load of firewood into the muck. No one rushes to fix it. Firewood is precious, but so is energy, and most people are saving theirs for the work ahead. As you walk toward the fields, passing huts and sheds that lean at uncertain angles. You pass neighbors doing the same. Everyone wears the same expression: focused, grim, tired. There's no chatter, no morning greetings. You nod at an old man sharpening a sickle on a river rock. He nods back. That's enough. In a village this small, everyone knows each other's names, stories, misfortunes. But there's no room for small talk when the sky promises rain and the soil needs tending before it turns to sludge. By the time you reach the edge of your designated plot, the air is thicker, and the first hint of drizzle taps at your hood. The field is less a rectangle and more a scar on the earth. It's uneven, rocky, and choked with last season's failures. You sigh, grip your hoe, and begin the process of turning over the soil. It's heavy with water, sticky with clay, and clings to your boots like a curse. Every swing of the tool sends shocks through your wrists. Your fingers are already raw, and it's not even midday. Across the hedgerow, another laborer, a friend of your older brother, wrestles with a stubborn stump. His shirt is off, his back striped with welts from last week's lashings. He stole a loaf of bread from the manor's storehouse. His punishment was swift, public, and bloody. But he survived. Barely. That counts for something. You nod at him too. He doesn't see it. Hours pass. The sky grows darker. Your arms ache. Your legs wobble. You've only cleared a few feet and already your tunic is soaked. Your knees caked in mud, your back screaming. No one is coming to relieve you. There are no shifts, no lunch breaks, no labor laws. Just a task and a body, and whichever breaks first. Eventually, you pause to wipe your forehead. A drop of rain slides down your spine. You try not to shiver. Shivering wastes energy. You look down at your hands, muddy, blistered, shaking slightly, and wonder how many more days like this you'll endure before something in you simply gives out. But there's no time for that now, because the work must go on. The field isn't going to till itself, and if you don't finish by sundown, you won't be eating tonight. By the time the bell at the chapel groans out its midday warning, you're past exhaustion and well into numbness. The rain has gone from mist to drizzle, and your clothes cling to you like cold rags. The ache in your lower back has spread into your thighs, and the blister on your palm has opened, leaking something sticky and red. You don't stop working. You just switch hands and keep going. Because here in the real world of 13th century survival, injuries aren't reasons to pause. They're just details you live with. But not all wounds are visible. As you stoop to lift a sack of compost, mostly manure and straw, you catch a glimpse of your neighbor's son staggering toward the tree line. His leg is wrapped in a strip of fabric, soaked through and clearly infected. Last week, he sliced it open while splitting wood. Now his skin is darkening around the wound, and the smell coming off it is something between copper and rot. He's going to the healer's shack, but everyone knows that's less about recovery and more about final prayers. The healer, if you can call her that, is not a doctor. There are no real doctors here. No sterile rooms, no stethoscopes, no science. Just a widow in her 50s, bent and sharp-eyed, who's memorized 1,000 plant names and twice as many folk remedies. She was once the village herb keeper, a title that carried mild respect before the plague swept through and took most of her family. Now she's simply the old woman with the potions, and she treats everything from childbirth to abscesses with poultices made of mashed garlic, pig fat, and river clay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. No one asks why. No one has a better option. If the leg infection spreads, if it turns black, or if the fever gets too high, there's only one course of action: amputation, and not the kind done with anesthesia and surgical precision. Here it's two strong cousins, a wood-carving chisel, a belt to bite down on, and a fire-heated blade. Infection afterward is almost guaranteed. Survival is not. But when your body starts to rot while you're still alive, desperate choices feel less like horror and more like basic math. You think back to last winter, when your younger brother nearly died from a toothache. It started with a dull throb, turned into a pulsing boil in his jaw, and ended with the village cobbler, not a surgeon, pulling the tooth out with blacksmith tongs. No one else had tools strong enough. The gum tore. The bleeding took hours to stop. He survived, But the swelling lasted weeks, and his face was never quite the same afterward. Still, that makes him one of the lucky ones. Most people with infected teeth don't make it past the second week. A tooth can kill you just as easily as a sword. Medical advice, when it arrives, often comes from the clergy. Not because they know anything about anatomy, but because they're the only ones who can read. They quote ancient texts, speak of the four humors, blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm, and assign treatments based on your personality or the phase of the moon. Feeling weak? You have too much phlegm. Time for steaming herbs and fasting. Suffering from a rash? Clearly an excess of bile, drink vinegar and pray harder. Bleeding from your ears? That's probably demons, and you should confess your sins. Leeches are the closest thing to universal medicine. The logic is simple. If you're sick, something inside you must be bad and drawing blood will release it. So the leech jar comes out. They're kept in a damp corner of the healer's shack, wiggling in stagnant water. They're applied directly to your skin and you wait while they suck. No one likes it. Everyone tolerates it. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes you pass out. But when you wake up, your fever's down or you're dead. Either way, the procedure is considered complete. Wounds are cauterized with iron pokers. Colds are treated with boiled onion and honey if you can spare it. Headaches are solved by pressing a hot stone to the temple. And serious sickness? That's for the priest. He'll come with incense, holy water, and a warning. If your soul isn't ready, it better be soon. Because your body is running out of time. Your own ailments are less dramatic, but no less real. A persistent cough that burns your throat, a sore behind your left ear that never fully heals, and the constant fatigue that wraps itself around your ribs like a rope. You're not dying, not yet, but you feel how thin the margin is between you and the others who are. And then there are the things no one talks about. The quiet deaths. The infant wrapped in rags and buried at sunrise because its breath stopped in the night. The mother who never rose again after childbirth. The boy who vanished after taking a bad fall by the quarry. His family said it was an accident, but you heard whispers of mercy and shame. In a world where survival is already a full-time job, mental health isn't just neglected. It's non-existent. You've seen the ones who unravel. The man who began talking to the trees. The woman who stood barefoot in the snow for hours humming until her voice gave out. They aren't mocked. They aren't helped. They're simply left alone. Until they aren't anymore. You shake these thoughts from your head as the rain finally slows. The clouds remain, low and heavy, pressing the day into a slow, damp suffocation. You press your palms into your knees, stand up straight, and stretch your spine until it pops like firewood. Pain is normal. Pain is routine. It means you're still alive. You wipe your hands on your tunic, sling the hoe back over your shoulder, and head back toward the village. The sky may not be brightening, but the work must continue. The earth doesn't wait. Neither does illness. Neither do the consequences of falling behind. And as you pass the healer's hut and hear the groan of the boy inside, the one with the infected leg, you offer a silent hope that tonight, just maybe, someone beats the odds. By the time the sky begins to dim, you've managed to complete only a fraction of the fieldwork you'd intended. The rest will have to wait. Your arms throb with fatigue, and your legs feel hollow, like the bones have been scooped out and replaced with the kind of ache that hums even when you're still. As you walk the familiar muddy path back to your village, the air thickens with smoke from dozens of small fires. The scent is a heady mixture of burnt peat, boiled roots, and the unmistakable tang of wet wool drying too close to the flames. Your stomach, despite its earlier rejection of the morning gruel, growls loudly. Hunger is not a passing discomfort here. It's a companion, one that speaks in sharp pangs and hollow promises. You pass by the baker's hut, where a line has already formed, silent, barefoot figures clutching cloth-wrapped coins or handfuls of barter goods, eggs, thread, dried herbs. Inside the baker, a large woman with arms like tree trunks slaps loaves of rye dough onto a hot stone slab. There's no oven door, just an open mouth of heat into which the day's hopes are shoved and scorched. The bread smells heavenly. It will taste like sand. The flour is cut with ground beans, crushed nuts, even bark when supplies are low. Wheat is for nobles. You can barely imagine what a wheat loaf would taste like. Probably like betrayal, probably amazing. You manage to trade a few bundles of nettle you'd gathered earlier for a half loaf. It's still warm, and you clutch it like treasure as you make your way home. As you step back inside your dwelling, the heat is overwhelming. The fire pit has been burning low all day, fed with scraps of moss and twigs, and the lack of ventilation means smoke hovers thick near the ceiling. Your eyes sting. You wave it away instinctively, then remember there's no point. The smoke will stay until it wants to leave. Dinner is already on. A blackened iron pot swings gently above the fire, filled with a stew so thin it borders on being flavored water. Inside float chopped turnip stems, a few unidentifiable tubers, and a legume or two for texture. The smell is earthy and faintly sour. Your sister stirs it with a carved stick while humming to herself, her voice cracked from dust and disuse. Your youngest sibling sits by the wall, rocking slightly, distracted by something only he sees. He's never spoken. Some say it's a spirit that took his voice. Others say it's just the way he is. No one has the tools to find out. The meal is silent, bowls are passed, bread is torn, dipped, chewed slowly. You eat in long, thoughtful mouthfuls, trying not to taste the stew and failing. It fills the space in your stomach without satisfying it. You chew on the bread crust longer than necessary, if only to keep your mouth busy. There's a single onion on the table. It's cut into 5 pieces and rationed with quiet reverence. 1 piece is yours. You hold it like a rare jewel before swallowing it whole. After dinner, the bowls are rinsed with boiled water and left by the fire. There is no scrubbing, no soap. The heat will dry them and hopefully kill whatever might try to make a home on them overnight. You stare at the fire for a long time, watching the way the coals pulse like a heartbeat beneath the ash. Your father is sharpening a knife not for hunting or defense, but for slicing bark into kindling. The room is filled with small sounds. Wood on stone, someone coughing, the shuffle of straw as your mother turns in her corner. There's no music, no laughter, no idle chatter. Just survival, humming like a low drum beneath every breath. Eventually, someone murmurs the evening prayer. It's short, unembellished. A few words to the sky, to God, to the saints, to whoever is listening, then silence again. Religion here isn't about joy or celebration, it's obligation, fear wrapped in ritual. You say the words not because you believe deeply, but because not saying them feels dangerous. You've seen what happens to those who stop going to Mass. They don't just fall out of favor with the priest, they fall out of favor with everyone. The community is tight-knit in all the worst ways. Everyone knows everyone, everyone watches. A single rumor can bury you deeper than any grave. You unroll your sleeping mat, if it can be called that. A fraying sheet of burlap laid over a pile of straw that smells faintly of mildew. You curl up fully dressed, boots by your side, cloak over your head. The fire pops once and you flinch instinctively. You've never gotten used to that sound. Not since the fire in the barn took the neighbor's family last year. Sparks can kill. But you need the warmth. The cold outside has already started to bleed into the hut, coiling around your ankles like a living thing. As your body begins to settle, the itching starts again. Lice. Always. You scratch at the back of your neck, then your waistline, then your calf. You try not to think about it. You try not to think about anything. But thoughts creep in. Will tomorrow bring rain again? Will the Lord's steward demand taxes? Will your mother's cough worsen? You've heard stories of people simply not waking up, and no one ever knows why. Maybe their hearts give out. Maybe they just get tired of enduring. Someone near you shifts, snoring begins, muffled and raspy. The baby across the room whimpers, then quiets. Outside, a dog barks once, followed by silence. Total, unnerving silence. That's how the night ends, not with dreams or comfort, but with the quiet knowledge that morning will come whether you want it or not. And with it, the same cycle, the same mud, the same ache. You close your eyes and listen to your own breath, thick with smoke and dust. And in the stillness, you try to imagine a world with softness, with warmth, with beds. But the image doesn't stick. Your reality is louder. Dawn doesn't arrive with sunlight. It arrives with a sound, low, dull, and relentless. The church bell tolls like a voice from a dream, dragging you back into the cold reality you barely escaped for a few hours. Your eyes open slowly, lashes crusted, limbs stiff from lying curled on a floor harder than memory. The fire's gone out. What's left is a pale orange glow under blackened logs and a room full of breath misting in the icy air. No one wants to get up, but no one has the luxury of staying down. You roll onto your side, then push yourself upright with a grunt that makes your spine crack in protest. A sharp twinge in your hip reminds you that your body has had enough, and will keep having enough until it quits entirely. You reach for your cloak, still damp from yesterday's drizzle, and wrap it tightly around your shoulders. The smell is familiar. Earth, smoke, and the sour musk of unwashed wool. No point in washing it. There's no time. There's no firewood to spare. And besides, you'll be soaked again by noon. This morning's job isn't in the fields, it's worse. You've been assigned to the Lord's roadway crew, a rotating labor obligation imposed on every household once per quarter. Fixing the muddy paths that connect the village to the estate lands isn't paid work. It's expected. Refuse, and your family pays in crops or coin. Fail, and you risk punishment, the kind that leaves marks. So you go. The tools are simple. Wooden shovels, rusting spades, a cart with one cracked wheel. You work beside men twice your age and boys barely old enough to swing a mallet. The mud on the path reaches your ankles, sticky and cold. You dig trenches to redirect water, throw stones into holes, try to pack them down with your heels. It doesn't matter how hard you try. By next rain, the road will be a swamp again. But the Lord doesn't care about results. He cares that it looks done. A steward watches from a distance, arms folded under an oiled cloak, mounted on a horse so clean it glows. His boots are dry. His gloves are leather. His eyes sweep the group like a hawk searching for weakness. You avoid looking at him. You don't want to be noticed. In a world built on hierarchy, visibility is often dangerous. The wrong glance can lead to questions. Questions can lead to punishment. You work until your arms shake. A boy next to you, barefoot, red-haired, shivering, slips in the muck and cuts his palm on a shard of broken pottery, buried beneath the road. The steward glances at the wound, says nothing, and turns away. The boy wraps his hand with a strip of his own tunic and keeps working. No sympathy, no mercy, just mud. By midday, your stomach is folding in on itself. You pull a cloth from your pouch, bread crusts and a half-rotten apple. You eat quickly, standing, rain dripping from your hood, the wind slicing through every thread of your tunic. The apple is soft, the bread worse, but it keeps you upright. That's the only measure that matters. Afternoon work is slower. Everyone is tired. A few men start coughing hard, deep, rattling coughs that shake their entire bodies. You recognize the sound. It's the kind that doesn't go away. One of them wipes blood on his sleeve and keeps digging. You say nothing. He says nothing. Everyone knows what it means. No one has the power to stop it. When the sun finally begins to fade, barely visible through the gray, you're allowed to leave. Your legs barely function. The skin on your palms has split in places. The mud has soaked through your socks and turned your feet into cold, numb blocks. You pass the steward again on the way out. He doesn't look at you. You don't look at him. Back home, the hut is no warmer than when you left it. Your sister is weaving cloth in the corner, her fingers red and chapped. She'll trade it for dried beans if she finishes by the week's end. Your father is fixing the trap door that leads to your root cellar. Last night, a rat got in. The carcass is still outside, hanging from a post to warn others. It probably won't work, but rituals matter, even the desperate ones. You don't eat right away. You sit first. Let your back fold. Let your hands relax. Let your bones settle like bricks dropped into a river. The silence in the room is deep. Not peaceful, just empty. Everyone is thinking the same thing. How do we do this again tomorrow? Dinner is the same stew reheated with one new ingredient, a pinch of dried herbs your mother found near the fence line. It adds something. Not flavor, exactly, but distraction. You eat in silence. And afterward, you stretch your aching body out again on the floor, boots still on. Removing them means facing the damage to your feet. And you don't have the strength to deal with that right now. Sleep doesn't come easily. The wind has picked up outside, howling like an animal denied entry. The walls creak, the roof drips. Somewhere nearby, a dog howls. You close your eyes and try not to listen. You try not to think about the day you'll eventually collapse. Because everyone does. Some from injury, some from disease, some just from being too tired to wake up, and no one mourns for long. The village doesn't have time for grief. Life rolls on unyielding. Another field to plow, another back to break, another name forgotten within a week. The road crew you leave today will have another member tomorrow, and no one will remember your blisters but you. The thing no one tells you when imagining life centuries ago is just how much the weather isn't just a backdrop. It's an adversary. An unrelenting, emotionless force that shapes every minute of your day, defines what you wear, how you sleep, what you eat, and sometimes, whether you live through the month. You don't think about the climate in any broad sense. You think about whether the sky will kill your crops, flood your hut, or freeze your feet before morning. Winter arrives not like a postcard but like an execution. There's no insulation, no glass panes, just walls of uneven timber, stuffed with dried grass and mud which crack when the frost comes hard. You wake up some mornings with your hair frozen to the inside of your blanket. You can see your breath from your bed, and sometimes from your pillow, if you're lucky enough to have one. The fire barely helps. Wood is a luxury. The forests are owned by the Lord, and you can be fined, or worse, for gathering fallen branches without permission. So instead, you burn dried animal dung, hay, old tools, even shoes beyond repair. Anything that catches. The cold doesn't ask for permission. It enters through your sleeves, slides down your spine, curls around your toes like a curse. Your hands are never truly warm, only different degrees of numb. You've learned to work with fingers that don't feel. You tie knots without dexterity. You grip handles with cracked skin. Sometimes your fingernails go black. You don't ask why. You just hope they don't fall off. Washing? Out of the question. Water freezes in the bucket before you've had time to use it. You scrape the frost off the lip of your drinking jar every morning. And if your clothes are wet when night falls, you sleep in them anyway. You don't dare take them off because nothing dries without sun or fire, and the fire belongs to the room, not to you. You huddle with family, pressed so close, you can feel every breath and heartbeat. It's not comfort. It's necessity. You sleep like animals for the same reason animals do, survival. Then comes summer, and you think maybe relief is coming. But summer isn't peace. It's heat without mercy. The sun beats down on your bare head until your neck blisters. The air is heavy and filled with insects, biting, buzzing things that live in the thatch of your roof and wake you with their whispering wings. Your only clothing is the same wool tunic you wore in winter, now soaked with sweat and clinging like a wet sack. There's no change of wardrobe, no linens or cooling fabric. You wear what you own, and what you own is thick, scratchy, and drenched in misery. Bathing, rare in any season, becomes unthinkable in summer. Not because the water is cold, but because the only water source is the same stream where people wash vegetables, clean livestock, and dump waste. The water's warm, yes, but it's also cloudy, floating with algae and the discarded parts of someone else's chores. You'd boil it if you could spare the firewood, but you can't. So you drink ale and hope it keeps you upright. Some people boil weeds into teas, bitter and thick, said to clear the body of heat demons. Others wear charms around their necks to ward off sun fevers. You just sweat and keep walking. The bugs don't care about your traditions. Fleas multiply in your bedding, lice in your hair and flies in your food. Every meal becomes a battle to keep your portion free of wings and legs. You swat until your arms tire, then give up. You've eaten worse, and the rain doesn't cool anything. It just turns the dirt into glue. Mud creeps into your shoes, coats your ankles, ruins your tools. Your roof leaks, your walls sweat, Everything smells like mildew and wet goats. The few vegetables that sprout in your garden sometimes rot on the stem, drowned by storms or scorched by sun. The carrots fork strangely in the soil, splitting like broken fingers. You eat them anyway. When the wind comes, it's not a breeze. It's a bully. It slams the shutters, lifts the corners of the roof that aren't nailed tight, and whistles through the cracks in the floorboards. It carries dust, pollen, ash from someone else's fire. It leaves grit on your teeth and in your lungs. The old people say when the wind changes direction, death is coming. You don't know if it's true, but you always notice when it happens. Autumn brings its own menace. It's the season of deciding whether you'll make it through the next one. The harvest is do or die, and if the yield is low, so is morale. Root cellars are counted daily. Mold is scraped from stored cheese with a knife. Apples are sliced thin and dried over the fire, their shriveled forms hung from rafters like desperate prayers. You measure every sack of grain like it's your final coin purse. You weigh your children by sight. Who's looking thinner? Who's coughing more? You adjust rations in your head. You pretend you're not doing it. You pray they don't notice. Some years the winter comes too early, the harvest too late, the sun too brief. You've known people who simply didn't make it. A girl from your village froze 2 steps from her door. They found her stiff in the snow, eyes wide open. An old man died while picking turnips, buried before nightfall to avoid wolves. No ceremony, just necessity. Nature is not a nurturing mother in this life. She's a feral force, and every day you spend above ground is a day you've managed to outwit her for just a little longer. You don't thank her, you don't curse her, you just endure her. And when a rare, calm evening comes, when the wind dies down and the fire burns steady, you sit quietly and breathe in the moment like it's a miracle. You don't speak, you don't sing, you just exist wrapped in rough cloth, watching the sky from the cracks in the wall, knowing this moment will not last. But you let it hold you, even if just for a heartbeat. Because out here, in this forgotten patch of land ruled by weather, superstition, and sweat, one peaceful night is as close to salvation as you're ever going to get. You hear the phrase, cleanliness is next to godliness in the modern world. But here, in the crusted corners of the 13th century, cleanliness is more suspicion than virtue, an oddity, even a danger. If you bathe too often, the whispers begin. They say you're prideful, that you're tempting illness, that you must have something to hide, because here washing isn't routine, it's a ritual. And like all rituals in this world, it comes with risk. Water is everywhere, but none of it is safe. The river glistens in the sunlight, picturesque from a distance, but it's a shared artery for every nearby soul. Livestock wade in it, children splash in it, buckets of waste are dumped upstream into it. A dead sheep once floated down it for 3 days before anyone could dislodge the bloated body. That didn't stop anyone from using the water. You just wait a while. Let the current purify it, or pretend it did. So, when you do clean yourself, if you do, it's not a long, luxurious soak in a tub. It's a shallow splash in a wooden barrel, filled with water someone else has already used, maybe twice. Heated by firewood that took hours to gather and days to dry, it steams slightly, but cools fast. You step in, fully clothed, then peel your garments off once inside, trying to keep your skin from scraping the splintered wood. No soap, just sand or ashes rubbed against the skin. You scrub until the itch subsides or until your skin turns red. Then you rinse. If you're lucky, the lice fall off. If not, they retreat until next time. You don't bathe often, not just because of the effort, but because of what people believe. Too much bathing weakens the body. That's the local wisdom. Opens the pores, lets the disease spirits in. Priests discourage it. Doctors, if you can find one, will say the same. Your best defense against illness, they claim, is a thick layer of grime. Dirt forms a barrier. Filth protects. The rich perfume their clothes and wigs. You, if you're daring, dab vinegar on your neck to mask the scent of your own decay. And there is scent, an undeniable presence. It's in the air. It clings to everything. Sweat, smoke, animal droppings, mold, fermented cabbage. You don't notice it until you're near someone different, someone freshly arrived from a wealthier estate perhaps, with beeswax on their boots and lavender in their sleeves. They smell alien, untrustworthy, clean. Your clothes rarely touch water. You wear them until they stiffen. Then you beat them with sticks, hang them over smoky fires, and pray the fleas get smoked out. A shirt might last 2 years before it falls apart at the seams. Undergarments are optional. Many go without. Linen is expensive, and even when owned, it's too precious to stain with sweat. So you live in wool, heavy, hot, rough wool that scratches until your skin gives up the fight. Hair care is theoretical. Combs are handmade from horn or wood, and pulling them through your scalp often draws blood. But you do it anyway. Not for beauty, for control. Untended hair becomes a nesting ground. Lice, nits, sometimes tiny mites that live near the scalp and dig in. You've seen someone's ear infested. You didn't sleep that night. Teeth, if you still have most of yours, are rarely cleaned. There are no brushes, just twigs with frayed ends or bits of cloth if you're meticulous. Some chew on fennel seeds or mint leaves, but those are rare finds and often chewed only to distract from hunger. Toothaches are accepted like the weather. If it gets bad enough, you see the village smith or the miller's helper, whoever has strong hands and a metal tool. They'll pull it, or break it, or both. And when illness does take root, when fever burns through your body or a sore turns black, you don't rush to clean. You cover it, hide it, pretend it isn't there, because once people see it, everything changes. They step back, they whisper, they mark your door. The healer might visit, or might avoid you, fearing contamination. Some will say you brought it on yourself, that you washed too often, that you tempted God with vanity. Clean is not comfort. Clean is suspicious. And more often than not, clean is fleeting. So you learn to live with the dirt, to fold yourself into it like another layer of skin. When your hands are blackened with soil, when your face streaks with sweat and soot, you don't feel ashamed, you feel hidden. You feel safe. You feel like everyone else. And at night, as you lie on straw that crunches under your weight, wrapped in a cloak you haven't removed in weeks, you don't wish for a bath, you wish for warmth, you wish for quiet. And you wish that come morning, you'll still have the strength to rise, filthy, aching, and very much alive. As the sun slides beneath the line of the hills and the sky turns a sullen shade of copper, the village settles into what some would call evening. You wouldn't. Evening suggests a winding down, a peaceful transition from effort to rest. But for you, and for everyone in this mud-choked corner of existence, it's just another stage of survival. It's the time of day when the ache in your belly becomes harder to ignore, when your hands tremble with fatigue, and when the hope for a decent meal begins and ends with a wooden bowl that still smells like yesterday's disappointment. Food here is not a pleasure. It's not a ritual. It is a negotiation with nature, a test of your endurance, and often a gamble with illness. Tonight's dinner is as familiar as it is grim. A thin stew boiled until every ingredient surrenders to the broth. There's a turnip root in there, or part of one. A bit of barley, something green that may have been a herb once, though now it more closely resembles pond scum. You can smell the smoke more than the food. That's not because the cooking fire is strong. It's because the stew isn't. You ladle it into your bowl with care, not because it's precious, but because spilling would mean wasting heat, time, and the faint illusion of nourishment. Each spoonful drips slowly, like the day itself. Unwilling, cold at the edges, barely enough to fill the space you call a stomach. You chew without resistance. There is no texture, no flavor, just warmth and wetness, and the grit of soil that wasn't fully scrubbed from the turnip skin. Sometimes, if the rats haven't gotten to it first, you might have dried beans, or a handful of wild mushrooms. But mushrooms are dangerous. One wrong pick, and your meal becomes your last right. There's a boy 2 huts over who hasn't spoken since his brother died, foaming at the mouth after eating the wrong cap. Their father still swears it was just bad luck, but no one in the village will forage with him anymore. And then there's bread. Always bread. Hard, dry, unyielding. It's made with flour that's more bark and barley than anything noble. On scarce days, you dip it in stew to soften it. On worse days, you gnaw on it like a bone. When grain is low, you mix in ground acorns, boiled weeds, even ash. If you're desperate, and most are, you'll eat bread that smells faintly of mildew and hope it's not the kind that causes dreams. Not good dreams, mind you. The kind brought on by ergot, the fungus that hides in spoiled rye and makes your fingers twitch and your mind dissolve. People have danced into seizures from it, laughed until their lungs gave out. Hallucinated angels, or demons. No one's sure which. Protein is rare. Meat is rarer. You don't own animals for slaughter. If you're lucky, you trade for bones, already boiled once by someone richer than you. You reboil them, hoping for flavor. On feast days, maybe the Lord throws scraps to the village. You've seen people fight over a pig's ear. You once saw a man break a rib tackling someone for an oxtail. No shame in hunger, no dignity either. Cheese exists, but it's a luxury. Usually salted and sharp, made from milk you wouldn't drink otherwise. Milk itself sours quickly and most families don't bother. Dairy is seasonal, you can't count on it. Butter, when it's available, is yellowish and waxy. You spread it thinly over stale bread, not for taste, but to pretend you've eaten something of substance. And if the stars align, if the harvest was good, if the animals were generous, if the taxes weren't too high, you might taste dried fish. Thin, leathery strips pulled from a basket near the smokehouse, tough as old rope and twice as chewy. But that's rare. So rare you don't even crave it. Craving something you can't have is a kind of madness you've learned to suppress. The children eat in silence. They've learned not to ask for more. Your youngest sister used to cry after dinner. Now she doesn't even look up from her bowl. The human body adapts, but the soul feels every missed meal. You try to smile at her. She doesn't smile back. Outside, someone dumps a pot of cooking water into the dirt, the hiss of steam rising like a ghost. A dog barks. A goat bleats. The sounds of dinner's end ripple across the village like a closing curtain. People retreat to their huts, bellies half full, minds already turning to tomorrow. Because hunger doesn't end. It just waits for the next opportunity. You wash your bowl with a handful of sand and a splash of gray water, rub it clean with the edge of your tunic, and set it aside. You don't look at it again. You don't want to. There's no comfort there. Only memory. And as you sit by the fire, hands cradled near the weak flame, you think of the stories you've heard, the songs sung quietly at gatherings, about lands far away where food is abundant, where spices fill the air, where tables groan under roasted meat and sweet pies. You don't believe them. Not really. They're fairy tales. Distractions. What you have is this: turnip soup, bark bread, and a belly that never stops whispering. That's your reality. And no song can change that. But even fairy tales have a purpose. They make you feel, for just a second, like more is possible. Like somewhere, somehow, someone isn't hungry. And that flicker, small and absurd as it is, might be the only thing that carries you to morning. The meal is over. The fire is down to coals. And outside the hut, the wind carries the last moans of livestock settling in the dark. It should be a time for stillness, but there is no true pause in your world, not even in thought, because now comes the part of the day ruled not by the body, but by something heavier, the church. And it governs not through laws written on scrolls, but through fear carved into your bones since the moment you could walk. You hear the chapel bell again, dull and distant, like it's ringing underwater. It marks the evening prayer, and whether you're inside a candlelit stone nave or huddled next to a sputtering hearth, you stop what you're doing and lower your head. The words spill from your mouth not from faith but from habit, a litany in Latin you don't fully understand. You were never taught to read it, never allowed to. Only the priest and his clerk know the full meaning. You've only learned the rhythm, the required posture, the gravity of getting it wrong. Your world is carved into hours by bells. Morning prayer, work hour, midday devotion, evening reflection. There are no weekends, but there are saints' days, dozens of them. Holy days that offer a brief break from toil, but not for celebration. On those days, you kneel longer, confess deeper, and eat less. Some days are for fasting, and the rules are precise. No meat, no pleasure, no sleep before penance. And you obey, because not obeying isn't just social suicide, it's spiritual treason. The priest is not just a man in robes. He is your judge, your confessor, your only translator between life and damnation. You fear God, yes, but you fear the priest more. His words carry weight. A single accusation from him, that you've spoken heresy, skipped mass, harbored impure thoughts, can turn your entire village against you. Whispers become silence. Then silence becomes exile. Then, in rare but unforgettable cases, exile becomes execution. You've seen it. Not a burning. No. That happens in cities. But flogging, drowning, disfigurement under public scrutiny? These things happen here, quietly, symbolically, effectively. You remember when Agnes, the weaver's widow, was found with a carved charm buried near her threshold, an old symbol, not of the saints, but of something older. She said it was to keep foxes from the henhouse. The priest said it was pagan. She was made to kneel for 2 days without food, slapped until her lips bled, and forced to confess in front of the entire parish. She still walks the village paths, but no one speaks to her. Not even her grandchildren. That's the power of the cloth. That's the weight of doctrine. And yet, despite the fear, the church offers the only glimmers of hope most can cling to. The afterlife, that elusive paradise where hunger is gone and pain is meaningless. A reward for obedience, for suffering, for surviving. You pray because it's the only time you feel like someone might be listening. Not your Lord, not your kin, not even yourself, but perhaps something greater behind the sky might notice. You've never seen a Bible. You've never held one. They're kept locked in the chapel, written in looping script on parchment worth more than your family's entire garden. The priest reads from it during Mass, his voice echoing off the stone, the words cascading like riddles. You understand fragments, stories of saints burned, of sinners swallowed by the earth, of paradise promised to those who endure. You try to believe. You want to. But it's hard when belief is delivered by someone who rides a horse while you walk barefoot. The church collects its tithe with quiet precision. 10% of whatever you grow, bake, catch, or brew. If you have no coin, they'll take your eggs, your wool, your time. Sometimes they take your children, offering them to monasteries where they'll be educated, perhaps even elevated. But not always. Some never return. Some come back years later, their eyes strange, their voices clipped, their bodies stiff with discipline. One boy from the next village over returned as a man who no longer smiled. No one asked what he'd seen. No one wanted to know. Despite everything, the church still feels safer than the Lord's Hall. The priest may threaten your soul, but the steward can threaten your body. Between altar and sword, most choose the pew. You line up every Sunday, rain or snow, to kneel on cold stone floors and listen to a sermon about humility, sin, salvation. You confess sins you don't understand to avoid suspicion. You cross yourself even when your fingers are numb. You fast, you bow, you chant. And sometimes, in the rarest of moments, you feel something stir. During the last hymn, maybe. Or when the light catches the stained glass window and paints the wall with color so vivid, you forget for a heartbeat how gray everything else is. In that flicker, you wonder if grace is real. If perhaps beyond the blisters and the lashings and the bland stew, there is something better waiting. But the bell tolls again, and the moment passes. The sky is dark. The chapel is closed. The priest has gone home to his private quarters and his bread made from actual wheat. You wrap your cloak tighter and walk back through mud toward your hut. Another night, another prayer whispered into the thatch. Hoping God hears it before the lice wake you again. The fire has died to embers again. You lie wrapped in the same cloak you worked, ate, and prayed in, every fiber of it damp with the residue of your day. Your limbs are too heavy to move, your thoughts too slow to finish. But sleep isn't peace. It's a negotiation. You drift in and out of shallow slumber, disturbed by the scraping of rats behind the wall or the wet coughing of someone nearby. Your body is exhausted, but your mind can't fully rest. Not when tomorrow looks so much like today, and yesterday never really ended. Outside, the cold moves like a mist. It crawls under the doorframe, coils around your ankles, and settles across the room like a silent judge. You don't light the fire again, not because you don't want to, but because the wood is gone and so is your strength. The only light is from the fading coals blinking like tired eyes, casting long shadows that make the walls seem to breathe. You turn your head toward the sound of breathing, your brother maybe, or your father, or just someone who made it to this part of the day. You think about what it means to survive, not in the way stories make it sound, heroic, noble, triumphant, but in the real grinding way, through the bruises, the frostbite, the stomach cramps from spoiled food, the blisters on your hands, the humiliation of washing in silence, the terror of waking up with a new ache and no cure for it. Survival here is not glory. It's patience. It's silence. It's stubbornness disguised as faith. And as you lie there, face turned to the ceiling where spiders spin undisturbed, you wonder what might have been if you'd been born elsewhere. Elsewhen. A warm bed, a clean floor, a voice reading you to sleep. You'll never know those things. They exist like myths, like distant stars you can name but never touch. Your world is smaller, simpler, crueler, but it is also filled with the quiet defiance of those who wake up each morning and keep going. You may not think of yourself as brave, but bravery here isn't loud. It's not waving banners or drawing swords, it's rising with the sun and facing the cold. It's cutting wood with shaking hands. It's scraping mold off bread and still feeding it to your child. It's whispering prayers not because you believe someone's listening, but because hope is cheaper than despair. In the morning, the cycle will begin again. You will rise, stretch, wince, dress in the same stiff garments, and walk out into a world that doesn't notice your suffering. You will work until your knees buckle, eat until your jaw tires, pray until your voice cracks, and then, if luck permits, you'll do it all again. But for now, you lie still, the only sound your heartbeat pounding like a slow drum. Somewhere in the dark, a baby cries, and a mother soothes it with a song that has no words, just hums and vibrations passed down like secrets. Somewhere a rooster shifts on a beam, feathers ruffling in its sleep. Somewhere a candle burns out. And somewhere beyond all that, the world continues turning, unaware of your ache, your sweat, your hope. This is what a day in your life looks like. A life no one romanticizes once they've truly seen it. There is no chivalry here, no ballads, no grand speeches, just mud, hunger, prayers, and the smallest flickers of persistence that keep the human spirit breathing through the worst of it. If you're still here truly, thank you. You've just traveled through time not in luxury or grandeur, but in the raw footsteps of those whose lives were never written down, never remembered by name. And maybe now you understand why they deserve to be remembered anyway. If this journey moved you, taught you something, or even just made you grateful for your own warm bed, please consider subscribing to the channel, not out of obligation, but because your curiosity deserves to be nurtured. Your presence here matters, and this community grows with each new voice. Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts. Did this story surprise you? Did it change how you see history? What part of this life would have broken you? Or maybe what part reminded you of your own strength? I'd love to know where you're from, when you're watching, and how you connected with this glimpse into the past. And if you've ever heard a story from your own family that echoes even a piece of this world, please share it. These stories don't live in books alone. They live in us. We're building something here, a place for memory, for empathy, and for stories that deserve to be told without polish or pretense. I'm grateful to have you as part of it. Until next time, sleep well. And remember, we are here because they endured.